Accounting for over 440,000 of the almost 2.4 million deaths in the United States, cardiovascular disease has undeniably been winning the battle against the American people in regards to health. Despite these numbers, the cardiac mortality rate in the United States has actually steadily declined over the years due to factors such as improvement in emergency cardiac care, and as well as modification of certain risk factors with the presence of certain research. However, this does not change the fact that cardiovascular disease is the #1 cause of death worldwide. Tonight, the CD1 crew looks into a plethora of risk factors associated with cardiovascular disease, which has topped the rigor mortis charts here in the United States for almost a century. Good evening, Taylor Adair here, and tonight we are diving into cardiovascular disease. The American Heart Association defines the condition as a heart and blood vessel disease that is generally related to what is known as atherosclerosis, or arterial plaque buildup. The most common form of CVD is currently coronary heart disease, followed by ischemic stroke and heart failure. The list of risk factors are extensive and include both modifiable and non-modifiable risks. We have Eric Alley in the studio today, and he's going to give us a spiel on the non-modifiable factors that are associated with CVD. Here's Eric.
Thanks, Taylor. First risk factor we're going to look at is age. Age is the single strongest risk factor for cardiovascular disease. After the age of 55, for example, your risk of stroke doubles every 10 years. Some suggest that age is simply synonymous with heart disease, while others suggest that age is correlated with increased risk exposure to other risk factors. Family history provides a risk through genetics. Your risk of developing heart disease increases up to 50% if both parents suffer from heart disease before the age of 55. Research suggests that genes may affect things such as baseline cholesterol levels or hypertension, increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease. Genetics testing can help determine a family's risk. Family history may also be associated with increased likelihood to adopt poor health behaviors, such as smoking or drinking. Gender differences reveal that while men and women both have equal likelihood to develop cardiovascular disease, men are more likely to develop it earlier in life. After menopause, however, the risk is the same, as decreased levels of estrogen are correlated with higher lipid levels. In addition, diabetes, smoking, and family history have been shown to be more associated with women's risk factors. Ethnic differences reveal vast discrepancies. African Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop cardiovascular disease than Asians. Differences in genetics are associated with this, but there are also correlations with lifestyle and cultural differences. Social and economic factors tie in as well, as minorities are much more likely to have lower SES. For more info on this, let's send it over to Caroline.
Socioeconomic status, or SES, is a measure that looks at any combination of 3 factors: a person's education, job, and income. A combination of the 3 factors is the most reliable. However, the most reliable single factor is education. No one knows why measures of SES have a negative correlation with cardiovascular disease. Some researchers suspect that these measures relate to a person's ability to postpone gratification, an ability that may be linked to adherence to medical advice and health-protecting habits. Others believe that SES is correlated with a person's experiences early in life that affect people physically and mentally. Regardless of why higher SES corresponds to lower cardiovascular disease, the relationship is apparent. In the past several decades, a rise of SES in the United States has occurred along with a decrease in death rates from cardiovascular disease. However, the increases in SES and health have not occurred at the same rate for people in the low SES range, which makes researchers think educational programs aimed at low SES individuals may help further lower rates of cardiovascular disease. The term social relationships refers to our relationships with our friends and family. Social relationships are very important for our health. For many years, research has shown that people with few social relationships and/or poor quality social relationships are more likely to be unhealthy. The negative side effects of living without strong social relationships include detriments to both physical and psychological health, as well as increased risk for suicide. One very important type of social relationship is marriage. Researchers have found that unmarried people have higher death rates after accounting for age adjustment, as well as higher rates of accidents and psychiatric disorders. On the other hand, having good social relationships has been linked with better health. For a long time, researchers did not know if social relationships affected health, or if poor health reduced social relationships. Now, researchers have found that social relationships can be a predictor of health, although causation cannot be implied. Nonetheless, these findings suggest that we may be able to improve our health by improving the quality of our social relationships. And now, back to you, Taylor.
Thank you, Caroline. Taylor Adair here reporting from the UNC Student Recreation Center located in the heart of Chapel Hill. It's facilities such as these that provide a variety of fitness opportunities in a comfortable and also inclusive space. Physical inactivity, smoking, and drinking are all modifiable risk factors that are highly correlated with cardiovascular disease. A sedentary lifestyle is considered to be the most important modifiable risk factor, which has an inverse relationship with CVD. Physical activity can actually increase levels of HDLs or good cholesterol within the body, while also decreasing blood pressure significantly. The American Heart Association recommends at least 30 minutes of physical activity per day, totaling between 150 minutes of moderate intensity to about 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity per week. A moderate amount of physical activity has a protective effect against CVD and follows the "some is good, more is better" concept. Other modifiable lifestyle behaviors that have an effect on the development of CVD include cigarette smoking and alcohol consumption. Research suggests that moderate drinking of approximately 3 to 14 alcoholic drinks per week is associated with lower risk of heart attack and possibly other cardiovascular disease. However, excessive consumption of more than 3 drinks per day has been shown to increase chances of ischemic stroke and heart attack. Alcohol increases triglyceride levels within the body in a dose-dependent manner, while also inhibiting platelet activity and decreasing fibrinogen levels. Cigarette smoking, on the other hand, impacts all phases of atherosclerosis, and exposure to mainstream as well as side-stream smoke creates an increased predisposition to developing CVD, with about 30% increase for side-stream smokers and 80% for mainstream smokers. Cigarette smoking increases inflammation, which is a key component of atherosclerosis, while also increasing thrombosis and oxidation of LDL-C, which is known as the bad cholesterol within the body. Exposure to chemicals and tobacco products also increases oxidative stress, which initiates cardiovascular dysfunction. Overall, though, tobacco use and alcohol consumption can have both detrimental and potentially beneficial effects, but there is no evidence supporting that the two act synergistically together to create a bigger risk. And we see this especially considering that smoking is perceived as a confounding parameter that clouds the beneficial effects of moderate alcohol consumption. Diet is another risk factor associated with CVD. So we have Frank in the studio ready to discuss some of the healthier eating habits that you can engage in. Here's Frank.
Hello everyone, Frank Allison here. I'm going to discuss what foods you should eat more of or less of to help prevent cardiovascular disease. First, let's look at what you should eat less of. Sodium should be less than 2,300 milligrams per day and less than 1,500 milligrams if you are older than 51 or African American. Consume less than 10% of your calories from saturated fatty acids. Consume less than 300 milligrams per day of dietary cholesterol. Keep trans fatty acid consumption as low as possible, especially by limiting foods that contain partially hydrogenated oils. Reduce the intake of calories from solid fats and added sugars. Reduce foods that contain refined grains, especially that contain solid fats, added sugars, and sodium. Alcohol should be consumed in moderation, up to 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men, and remember, only by adults of legal drinking age. Now let's look at what we should eat more of. Increase vegetable and fruit intake. Eat a variety of vegetables, especially dark green, red, and orange vegetables, beans, and peas. Consume at least half of all grains as whole grains. Increase intake of fat-free or low-fat milk or milk products. Choose a variety of protein foods, include seafood, lean meat, poultry, eggs, beans, peas, and soy products. Increase the amount and variety of seafood you eat in place of meat and poultry. Use oil to replace solid fats where available. Choose foods that are rich in potassium, dietary fiber, calcium, and vitamin D, which are nutrients of concern in American diets. And a final note about calorie intake. College-age, 19 to 30-year-old, moderately active females should be eating 2,000 to 2,200 calories per day, and males between 2,600 and 2,800 calories per day. And now back to you, Taylor.
Tonight's segment has disclosed a volume of information regarding cardiovascular disease and the risk factors associated with it. Age has been deemed the single strongest risk factor, but when looking at modifiability, physical activity, and diet do not lag too far behind. It is critical for us to reinforce that no matter how highly correlated a single risk factor may be, no one factor alone is a predictor of cardiovascular disease. It is actually the evaluation of the summation of multiple factors that actually paints an accurate view of complete risk. The inherent non-modifiable factors such as age, socioeconomic status, and ethnicity are far beyond our control, but that should give us even more of a drive to modify the controllable risk factors with our behaviors. Once again, this is Taylor Adair with Health Psych 101, CD1. Y'all have a good night.